Do you think they have a case for the top farm system in the game?
Yeah, I think the Red Sox have one of the best farm systems in baseball. They have three players that you can make a case for being top 10 prospects in baseball, and four who are, I think, are surefire top 50 prospects when you include Kyle Teel.
Hmm.
They've drafted well. Obviously, yeah, okay, when you pick fourth overall and you get Marcelo Mayer like they did in 2021, that helps. But Roman Anthony was what, a supplemental second round pick.
Yeah, he
Christian
got I think
Campbell.
2.5 million. So he got over. I mean, a lot of these high school guys that are picked there get paid a lot. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's not like, hey, like everybody was like all in on Roman Anthony. He wouldn't have been available there
Exactly.
if
Yep.
he was. Christian Campbell, I mean, even more question marks coming out of college. I mean, he's a fourth round pick who transformed his career
Hmm.
over the last year to be our minor league player of the year. Uh, Kyle Teel looks like a strong pick in the middle of the first round last year. And
Yep.
then you look at the lower levels of their system too. You can see the international talent that's coming right now with players like Yoelian Cespedes, Franklin Arias, both from that 2023 international class. Peral, as you talked about, was a top 100 guy too, until he got hurt and had Tommy John surgery. So I think they're just doing a really good job of acquiring talent from both the draft and especially at the lower levels internationally right now.
Hmm. Yeah, I think Christian Campbell is a player worth just focusing on a little. Obviously, our minor league player of the year this year. The transformation he's had as a prospect is, I mean, I don't know who the last prospect would be who had this sort of turnaround in this short period of time, but going from, like you had mentioned, sort of this mid-tier college prospect with a contact oriented profile, real questions about upside, and then we look up basically a year later and he's one of the more impressive all-around hitters in the entire minor leagues. He hits the ball exceptionally hard. He makes a ton of contact. He's an above average runner. It seems like he can be a solid defender. I guess where he's going to play is maybe his biggest question moving forward. But I imagine there are going to be people on our staff that are absolutely stuffing him inside like the top five on their top 100 lists. I still think like at this point I might even be underrating him in my head, just given how drastically different he is. Like, are you viewing him as a an equivalent talent to a guy like Roman Anthony? Do you think there's any separation? Where on your like personal hitting prospects list would he be kind of right now as you're thinking through where he's going to slot?
I think he certainly has a case to be in the top 10. And to your
Mm-hmm.
point about the transformation he's made, I mean, yeah, I've been covering prospects at Baseball America since 2007. So that's 17 years. And
Mm-hmm.
Christian Campbell has had one of the most incredible 1 year ascensions of any prospect that I've covered. Just to go from a fourth round pick who hit four home runs as a junior at Georgia Tech, wasn't ranked as a top 30 prospect in the Red Sox farm system coming into the season, to become a player where he now has one of the best hit power combinations in the minor leagues.
Mm-hmm.
Our minor league player of the year. I think, yeah, to to be there, to be making a case to be a top 10 prospect right now is pretty spectacular. He's always had really good hand-eye coordination, very low swing and miss rate, and there was, he's not like a little guy either. There's always been size and athleticism, but the swing that he had as an amateur, whether it was in high school or in
Mm-hmm.
college, never was conducive to him being able to really drive the baseball.
Yeah.
I think both he and the Red Sox player development staff, and to their scouting department as well, obviously for drafting
Mm-hmm.
him, but think they deserve a ton of credit for what he's been able to do over the past year, changing his swing, improving his bat speed, and the ability to drive the ball with damage without sacrificing too much of that contact in the process too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny thinking about him as this like six hit, six power potential hitter now when in his draft report we're calling him a slash and dash type, comparing him to Chandler Simpson, who was also a Georgia Tech product. He was never that sort of runner. We do mention that he has a higher power ceiling than Simpson does, but there is a large group of power grades between Chandler Simpson now and Christian Campbell now, and certainly he is already exceeded expectations that I had for him in terms of the power department. Maybe not the Red Sox. I would imagine this was even better than what the Red Sox might have expected if they were optimistic, but kudos to them if they were like, no, we kind of know we're getting a steal here. Both guys like Roman Anthony and Kristian Campbell are just players that maybe other orgs should have taken a shot on, or maybe you give more credit to the Red Sox player development for helping just make them better hitters overall. But you look at the first three hitters in this system. We've got Roman Anthony with 60 hits, 65 power. We've got Kristian Campbell with 60-60. We got Marcelo Mayer with 60-55. And there are more plus tools further down the list, but starting off with three guys with those sort of offensive tools. And then you've got Kyle Teel, who maybe is going to be an above average catcher with a really exciting, just athletic foundation. It's a lot to like, but who further down the list do you maybe want to touch on, unless you want to hit on some of these top guys a little more?
Yeah, I mean the top guys are pretty exciting. I probably should talk about them a bit, especially since Roman Anthony being our
Mm-hmm.
number one prospect, at least for now. There's this pitcher from Japan who might sign and shake that up. But I mean, I'm impressed with how well rounded of a offensive threat Roman Anthony is, both in terms of the lack of holes in his game and the upside. I mean, to hit the way that he did in AAA as a 20-year-old definitely jumps out. He's a very patient hitter. It was 79 walks this year, 86 walks last year. The swing decisions are extremely polished, maybe a little bit passive, but I'm fine with that.
Mm.
It's a really good left-handed swing. He's able to track the ball well. He picks up spin out of the hand, and then when he does swing, I mean, it's high end bat speed. It's 70 raw power. He was crushing baseballs as consistently as
Mm-hmm.
any prospect in the minor leagues this
And
year.
he
For
was crushing
yeah,
baseballs when he was in high school. In some ways, it's kind of like an opposite path that Kristian Campbell has had when he was in high school. I don't know what you thought about him when you watched him as an underclassman, or if you saw him in high school during his draft year. But I thought of him as this like boomer bust, power over hit type. He swung and missed a lot. I don't think I'll forget my first look at him was at the All Star game, the high school All Star game that was tied to the big league All Star game. I think he struck out in his first three plate appearances, and then he hit a home run to the moon to right field. And I was like, oh, that's why he's here. Like that was really impressive. And then the entire draft cycle, I was really concerned that just what sort of pure hitter is he going to be. He made some improvements during the spring, and then as soon as he got into pro ball, we saw a guy who had just excellent contact skills and chase ability. And I was like, oh, okay, well, this is a different sort of player than I thought he was going to be. And now, like you said, he's got an excellent eye, makes a lot of contact, and of all the top 10 hitters in the AL East that we have data for, his max exit velocity was best of the entire field.
yeah. I mean, it's basically outside of Junior Caminero. I mean, obviously he's graduated since then, but outside of him, he does as much damage as any minor league hitter consistently. I mean, exit velo is up to 116. Yeah, I mean but your points are right. I mean, that's why somebody like him, or why James Wood, when he was coming through the draft, it's why these guys were not first round picks, because people did have question. Right now, you were obviously very high on James Wood coming out of
Yeah,
high school,
I was definitely not on Roman Anthony to this degree. That's for sure.
but but yeah. So I mean, with Anthony now, you've got patience, power, a mechanically sound swing, and this is all from a player who's still 20 years old. So
Hmm.
I think this is somebody you should be hitting in the middle of a lineup for years in Boston.
Do you think he's a center fielder? Do you think he plays a corner? Do you think it really matters for his profile? Do you view him like a Dylan Cruz type in that way as a defender, where can
I
play
think
center field? Maybe he'll be better in a corner.
I think Cruz is a better defender than
I
Anthony.
I agree.
I think to be determined where he ultimately plays, especially Boston has Sedan Rafaela. Like he's not better than Sedan Rafaela defensively, at least in center field. And they do have Rafaela signed for
Rafaela could be a
a
great
gazillion years.
late inning defensive replacement for me.
I thought I was going to say great for the anti-golden at bat rule, maybe.
He would be as well. Yeah, maybe he's lumping him in with Nick Allen and with Austin Hedges.
No, but I mean those two guys. And then it's like, dude, like Marcelo Mayer is still
I
like
think he's underrated at this point. But you've long been, I think, high on him relative to other people, and kind of just speaking to how injuries have maybe not shown us just how good he is. I think with the ascension of Christian Campbell, with the ascension of Roman Anthony, there are going to be a lot of people who do forget how good Marcelo Mayer really is.
Yeah, I mean, Roman Anthony has been arrow up. Christian Campbell has been on a rocket ship. I don't think their ascension should change how we view. It doesn't change how I view Marcelo Mayer. I mean,
Yeah.
even if he dropped within the Red Sox list itself, just because he has these two other, stud prospects in the same organization, I do
Hmm.
think you could make a case for Mayer to move down a little bit from where we have him right now in the top 100, which I think is number 10 if you want. But I don't know. I see a 21-year-old shortstop who's a potential plus regular. I like the left-handed swing, the ease of operation, the bat speed, the barrel awareness. There's a
Hmm.
combination of contact and impact with him. We haven't maybe seen huge home run totals yet, but I think there's the potential in there to be a 25 plus home run, maybe 30 plus home run guy in his
Hmm.
prime. He's hitting balls up to 115 miles an hour. It's a 90th percentile exit velocity of like 106, 107. It's basically the same as players like, Kobe Mayo or Samuel Basayo with the Orioles. I don't think anybody questions their power. It's easy plus raw, maybe plus plus. And I just don't think he's fully tapped into it yet. And some of that is a matter of being more selective. That is the one, or that is one area of his offensive game that I would like to see him get better. I wouldn't call
Yeah.
him a free swinger, but it is a 50% swing rate. So that is very high. He's not up there chasing everything, but when you swing
Hmm.
that often, you're going to swing at stuff out of the zone and just at some pitches too, where they're borderline pitches or they're pitches
Hmm.
that are not in your hot zone in damage
Yeah.
counts, advantage situations. Whereas a hitter, you probably should lay off those pitches that he's a pretty smart player overall. I'm hopeful he'll be able to
Hmm.
make those adjustments.
Yeah. And the strikeout rate, I don't think is super scary. I mean, it was pretty consistently around 25% for most of his pro career in 2024, repeating double A after getting 43 games there in 2023, 77 games this year. It went from a 26% strikeout rate to a 19.7% strikeout rate. I think, given the sort of contact ability he has, the power that he has, that's perfectly fine. I don't think he's going to be this sort of like elite eye player by any means, but I think just given how you've talked about his swing, how I expect him to perform as an offensive player, when you pair that with how advanced and instinctive he is defensively, whether he's playing shortstop, whether he's playing third base, I think he's going to be a really reliable glove on the left side of the field. Um, would you rather have Marcelo Mayer or would you rather have Christian Campbell? I know we have Campbell number
Mm.
two on our Red Sox list, and we have Marcelo Mayer number three. But in terms of your personal, like I think I personally would still be on team Marcelo Mayer, but I can certainly see arguments either way. I'm curious if you land on one.
Ask me in a month because that's how close I think it is. I think the
Mm,
one part of it too is he has more defensive upside
yeah.
than Christian Campbell, but there is he is for a shortstop who's a big guy and who's always had a split camp on whether he's going to stay at shortstop, and is now having a bunch of injuries. That is concerning, and it sounds like the reports from scouts on him defensively are still mixed. I think he has good body control. He comes in well on the slow roller. He has a good internal clock. He's
Hmm.
very savvy, but he's not a quick twitch defender. I think
Yeah.
there's explosiveness to what he does at the plate. I think that gets undersold somewhat, but in the field, there are more questions about that part of his
And
game. I
that's,
know,
I feel like that's always been his defensive critique. Like, it's not like
right?
he's gotten older and gotten bigger and he's slowed down. Like, even in high school, I'm sure the same people who were skeptical of him defensively at that point are still now skeptical of him because he always stood out for, like you said, his instincts, the reliability of his hands, his arm strength. But he is not this, like, contrasting him with Jordan Lawler at the time was always interesting because Jordan Lawler was much more of the like twitchier, rangier, quicker mover in the field. But there were scouts who preferred Marcelo Mayer defensively because it just looked so easy. And he just had a way of slowing down the game that made his range seem like not a big deal to a lot of people. But certainly, if you do want your shortstops to be a little quicker, maybe you think, hey, he's going to move to third base. I'm inclined to just keep him there until like the big league game proves him to be too slow. And I think there have been some really good shortstops that are not exactly the most fleet of foot that do everything else really well and are still really impactful defenders. I would be more in that camp for him.
Yeah, he's not a fast runner. I don't think you need to be a fast runner to be a big league shortstop. I know some of the defensive metrics that teams have internally do have him graded well, but when you see some of the extra degree of difficulty type plays, uh, a lot of those balls this year did seem like they were getting by him. So yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I would keep him at shortstop as well. There's no reason at all to move him yet, but I do think I am optimistic about him hopefully being able to stay at shortstop. But I do think the concerns that some scouts have about his defense are at least valid
For sure.
critiques to have.
For sure. Okay, how about Kyle Teel? Do you view him as like a solid member of this top four that everyone's throwing on the Red Sox? Or is he like in a separate tier of his own? What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a clear number four. Like, I wouldn't put him in the same tier as these three, just because I think you could make a case for all three of these guys to be top 10 prospects
Yeah.
in baseball, and maybe I'm even higher on Meyer than most, but I think you can at least make that case for him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think Teal is like, maybe a top 25 prospect, certainly a top 50
Oh,
prospect.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I guess I don't know. We haven't put it actually together. Would you rather have? So right now in our top 100, we've got Kyle Teel and Dalton Rushing side by side. My initial instinct was to say I would rather have Dalton Rushing, but they're very different players.
Yes.
They both have catchers beside them, which is why I ask about them.
um,
And
yeah.
Teal is 25 right now. Rushing is 26 in our current top 100, which will, in my mind, I view Kyle Teal more in like the Brady Montgomery tier of player, who's a little bit further down this list. Like I would have him closer to Montgomery probably than I would Marcelo Mayer, but that could still be a top 50 prospect for me.
Are you putting Braden Montgomery in the top 100?
Yes, he's there now. I would still have him
Okay. Yeah.
there.
I mean,
Sounds like you are
the,
not there.
well, I mean, I think you can make a case for him to be in the top 100. But I mean, I think there's a separation where just on track record, right? We're like,
I just can't
okay,
imagine. So we had Brady Montgomery ranked in like the sort of top 10 of players in this 2024 draft class. I'm under the impression that like the depth of this top 100 falls off pretty quick, not quickly, but like once you get to around 30 or 40 or so, the tier of players falls off. And I just think basically everyone in our top 10 from the draft this past year will be on this list. Like we had Brady Montgomery ranked seventh, we had Nick Kurtz ranked eighth. We were always pretty high in Nick Kurtz relative maybe to like the scouts we talked to help make our draft list. I mean, I'm definitely having Nick Kurtz on my 100. Connor Griffin and Bryce Rayner. I imagine I'll have both those guys on the back of the 100 somewhere. So for me, Braden Montgomery is almost definitely going to slot somewhere in the like 45 to 70 range. And I imagine Kyle Teel for me would be somewhere close to the that 45 number, maybe
okay.
higher.
So you might be lower on Kyle Teal. I mean, I see Kyle Teal as somebody who the
Mm-hmm.
separator for me is all right. Well, Kyle Teal has already hit really well at Double
Mm-hmm.
A, was in Triple A. Was solid there. Obviously, numbers don't jump out quite as much there. Whereas Braden Montgomery, great at Texas A&M, and I love the pick by the Red Sox to be able to get him. I'm sure the injury played a role to a certain extent in the reason why he was still
Mm-hmm.
available there. But like, there's other guys like, I don't know, like not to like pick on Tommy Troy, but like, a really there've been really good college hitters who've gotten into pro ball, and then it's like,
Yeah.
so once they do it in pro ball, especially in the upper levels, the way Kyle Teal did his first season out, or really his first full season out, it's been pretty impressive to see.
Yeah, I mean, and I could just be light on like how people are talking about him defensively. I will say I was never really a fan of how Kyle Teel operated in the batter's box. His swing had a lot of noise. There was a lot of moving parts. I viewed it as a very high effort swing. I was unsure of like how much power he was going to get to in pro ball, but I mean, he's going to have a lot of doubles. I imagine, even if he doesn't have a ton of home runs, and maybe you're higher on the power upside for him. He hit 13 home runs this year. He got on base a lot. He made more contact than maybe I would have expected if I was on more of like the pessimistic range of outcomes. And so if I'm like reading through all of our notes and saying, hey, he's made a lot of progress defensively because, like, from an athletic standpoint, from an arm strength standpoint, there are no real questions with that. But there were some questions with how he framed, how he blocked, just kind of the nuances and the details of catching as an amateur that there were some questions about. If people are now putting like, yeah, he's no doubt he's going to stick there, he's going to catch, he's going to be really good. Maybe I'm just light on him as we're talking through them, but for me, I just think Braden Montgomery has a chance to be a more impactful hitter than Kyle Teel. And I think he has like prototypical right field tools. I think he's going to be a really good defender in an outfield corner. I would view him as a corner outfielder moving forward. I would imagine he gets some time in center field. Maybe he's one of these players that just winds up running better than I expect him to and can actually play that position, but he's got a close to elite arm if it's not an elite arm. And I just think he has a lot more power upside. So that's kind of why I would have them together. But if you're maybe a little more skeptical of what Braden Montgomery can do from a hit tool perspective and just higher across the board than me on Kyle Teel, I kind of understand the separation there. Kyle Teel has done it at higher levels in the minor leagues already, and Braden Montgomery does have some questions in that regard and has some injury history.
Yeah, so I mean, potentially 6 top 100 guys in this farm system. I probably even make a case for a couple more if you wanted to. I probably won't, because you could. I mean, you could say that about every farm system where it's like, oh well, you can make a case for a couple other
Not
guys.
every.
No, I know.
We'll
Sorry.
we'll talk about one on this episode that I don't know if you have any.
Well, sorry. The point that I was making was, well, you could for any farm system, you can say there are X number of top 100 prospects, and then
Yeah,
plus
sure.
2 or other, like, where you can make a
Fringy.
case or something.
Like here are the guys that are definitely going to be there, and here are the guys that are like, oh, someone might vote for him. Yeah.
Yeah, when you add it all up, it's like, well, that's 179 prospects total. Like, not
Yeah,
everyone's
like
going to
I
make it.
think right now, just without like refining all of our grades, like we've got well more than 100 players who have grades that would easily place them in the 100. So it is just a matter of like what is the sort of consensus on the 70 to 150 range of prospects.
Yeah.